Good Friday. It's the day that we remember when Jesus of Nazareth was crucified on a Roman cross. The night he was arrested, he had dinner with his disciples. One of his disciples, a guy named Judas, left the dinner early to betray him. We're never told why Judas does that. When the meal was over, Jesus takes the rest of the disciples to an olive grove. It was a place they often went for prayer and just to get away, right, to rest. Later in the evening, Judas arrives with this, it's a small militia, a contingent of temple guards, Roman soldiers. The story says that when they got there, that Jesus, fully realizing everything that was going to happen to him, stepped forward to meet them. Fully realizing everything that was going to happen, he stepped forward to meet them. But for the better part of 3 years, Jesus was announcing and enacting what he called the kingdom of God, right? God's reign, rule on earth as it is in heaven. It's all he's been about. It's been his life's work. And now this mob of mercenaries has shown up to effectively put a stop to it, to put a stop to him. Now, if you were in Jesus' shoes, what would you do? I mean, our most basic human instinct when we face threat is to flee or to fight. Jesus does neither of those things. He could have laid low, he could have, resurfaced later to keep his work going. He could have taken up arms to fight, but he doesn't do either of those things. Story says, in fact, that he goes to a place that was familiar, a place where he knew Judas would be able to find him. And at no point does he resort to violence. Not here in the olive grove, not during any of his trials. He knows what's going to happen to him. He's not naive. He knows he's going to be arrested. He knows he's going to be tortured. And he knows he's going to be executed. And he manages to resist our most basic instincts to either fight or flee. Instead, he finds a third way. He just steps forward to meet them. So why doesn't Jesus run and hide or fight back? Well, it turns out on the latter score that you can't bring about the kingdom of God by fighting. Jesus underwent several trials over the course of the next day, a couple with the religious leaders and one with the Roman governor, a man named Pilate. Pilate was concerned because he had heard rumors that Jesus referred to himself as the King of the Jews, or claimed to be the King of the Jews, which would make him a rival to Caesar. And so when he interrogates Jesus, he asks him, "Are you the King of the Jews?" And Jesus' answer is sort of interesting. It's kind of a yes and a no. He admits to being a king. He says, "My kingdom." But then he says, "My kingdom is not of this world." So he's a king of something, but it's a different kind of kingdom. Well, what does he mean? Well, he certainly doesn't mean that it's not for this world, as in it has nothing to do with human life in this world. I mean, that's what his ministry's been all about. It's about God's reign on earth as it is in heaven. So what does "of this world" mean? Well, he tells you. He says to Pilate, "If my kingdom were of this world, my followers would fight to keep me from being handed over." So there you have it. The trademark of human kingdoms, what it means for a kingdom to be of this world, is that it's established and maintained by violence, by fighting. I mean, isn't that how Caesar did it? That's how he established his kingdom, by conquering foreign people. It's how he maintained his kingdom. I mean, in many ways, that's what Jesus' trial is all about. On one level, Jesus being arrested and executed is about religious and political authorities maintaining their kingdom through violence. But Jesus can't fight to defend the kingdom of God, because that would be to compromise the very essence of what the kingdom of God is all about. That God is love, and you can't bring about the kingdom of God in that way. So Jesus can't fight. But why not run? Why not hide? Why not lay low for a bit and, resurface in some other time, some other place, and just keep doing what you've been doing? I mean, on one level, I imagine Jesus knew that would just delay the inevitable. I mean, if the religious and political authorities want you dead, you're not going to be able to run fast or far enough to avoid it. But that's the thing. Jesus wasn't trying to avoid it. Jesus didn't run and hide because he didn't just know he was going to die. He knew that he needed to die. That him dying had some special meaning, some special purpose. So he wasn't trying to avoid it. So you see, there's really nothing else for him to do. He can't fight. He can't run. So the only option for Jesus is to simply step forward and face the challenge. To be honest about who he is with a willingness to suffer for it. Jesus, fully realizing all that was going to happen to him, managed to resist the temptation to fight or flee. Peter, on the other hand, did both. So when Judas and his militia first arrive, Peter's quick to pick up a sword, and he uses it to slash off the ear of one of the guards. I mean, almost splitting the guy's skull open. Later that same night, when he was warming himself by a fire in the high priest's courtyard, on 3 different occasions, he gets asked if he's one of Jesus' disciples, and each time he denies even knowing Jesus. After the 3rd denial, he runs away. So Jesus, fully realizing what's going to happen to him, he doesn't run, he doesn't fight, he just steps forward to meet the challenge, the risk, the threat. Peter, on the other hand, fights to avoid any suffering, and when that doesn't work, he runs and hides. Why does he do that? I mean, Peter talked a big game. Prior to this, he told Jesus, I'll go anywhere, I'll follow you anywhere, even if it means I have to die with you. And at least at first, in the olive grove, it looks like he means what he said. I mean, when Peter picked up that sword, well, let's be honest, if a fight had broken out in that olive grove, there was no way that a couple fishermen and a tax collector would have been any match for temple guards and Roman soldiers. That would have been a bloodbath. The fact that Peter was so quick to provoke a fight suggests to me that he was actually ready to die. But if that's the case, then why deny even knowing Jesus later that night? I mean, what changed? What happened between the olive grove and the courtyard? Well, I mean, not to state the obvious, but what changed is that Jesus got arrested. That's what changed. I mean, I think as Peter sat there warming himself by that fire, I think he began to realize what Jesus had told him multiple times. That Jesus was in fact going to die. That Jesus allowed himself to be arrested. That there would be no violent revolution. That Jesus was in fact going to die. But here's the thing that Peter, even though he was beginning to realize that Jesus was going to die, he still didn't know why. See, Jesus knew why he was going to die. He didn't just know everything that was about to happen to him. He knew why it was going to happen. Jesus knew that the reason he had to die this way. Have you ever wondered that? Why does Jesus need to die this way? Why the arrest? Why the false accusations? Why the mock trials? Why the torture? And why the excruciating death? Why? Well, because Jesus knows that his death will be a representation of what we've been doing to God and one another since the beginning of time. It is the very incarnation of the kind of violence that we use to build our worlds, our personal lives, and our corporate kingdoms. It is the thing that we need to be healed from. And his death is what reveals it to us so that it can be healed. Jesus knows that, but Peter doesn't. As he sits there warming himself by that fire, I imagine that the idea that Jesus was in fact going to die felt senseless to him. Like, what good could possibly come from Jesus being arrested and executed? And if no good could come from Jesus being killed, well, then what good could possibly come from Peter entering into that same fate? I mean, I understand picking up a sword and willing to go to your death when you feel like you're dying a hero's death, when you're part of some violent revolution, that you're doing something noble and you're dying in the heat of battle. But as he sat there warming himself by that in that courtyard fire, he knew that if he died, it wasn't going to mean anything, or at least that's what he thought. So why admit to being Jesus' follower? See, Jesus was able to resist running on the one hand or fighting on the other, because he knew how important his death was. He knew what it meant. Peter didn't. And so he wasn't able to choose. He wasn't willing to choose what Jesus chose. So he chose first to fight, and then when that didn't work, he chose to run and hide. So, what's our excuse? I mean, the reason that Peter is unable or unwilling to choose the Jesus way, right, to fight or hide instead of just step forward to meet the challenge, was because he didn't know. He didn't know why Jesus needed to die. We're 2,000 years downstream, post-resurrection. We know things that Peter didn't know. I mean, we know obviously that Jesus was going to die, but we also know why. We know why Jesus needed to die. So you would think that we would be equipped to make the kind of choice that Jesus made. To just be honest about who we are as Christ followers in the world and meet the challenges that come with that, with a willingness to suffer for it. But it seems that so many Christians and so many churches are more characterized by Peter's actions than Jesus's. They're more likely to hide who they are or try to fight to force other people to live the way that we think they should or whatever. So what is it? I wonder if it's Peter didn't know the truth. I wonder if it's, in our case, it's that we don't love the truth. Peter didn't know it, but when he knew it, when he figured it out, he loved it. I wonder if for us, we know it, but we just don't love it. And one of the things that Jesus said to Pilate during his trial was that he came to testify to the truth, and that everyone who loves the truth comes to him, listens to him, because they recognize that what he says is true. Well, what is truth? I mean, that's the question Pilate asks Jesus. What is truth? Well, the answer is Jesus is truth. What Jesus says, what Jesus does is truth. Running and hiding, being dishonest about who he is, trying to avoid the suffering, that's not truth. Picking up arms and fighting to defend his work and his kingdom, that's not truth. Truth is stepping forward, knowing all that's going to happen. It's stepping forward. You know, when Judas and his militia showed up, Jesus asked them, "Who are you looking for?" And they said, "Jesus the Nazarene." And Jesus said, "I am he." Why can't that be more the posture of the average Christian person or the church? That if the world in which we live, you know, being a Christian person in the world will always come with challenges. It will always come with risk. And those challenges and those risks come in all kinds of different forms. It'll never be any different. But if trying to be a follower of Jesus in the world comes with a risk, comes with threat, comes with challenge, why can't the church be more like Jesus in the sense that we simply say, "Oh, who are you looking for?" And when the world says, "Well, we're looking for Jesus followers," that we just say, "That's us. That's who we are." To just be honest about who we are with a willingness to suffer the consequences, whatever that might be. To not run and hide, be silent, mute our voices, pretend like we don't believe the things that we actually believe because we don't want to become the target of hostility. But to not fight back either. To not take up arms, literally or metaphorically, to try to shape the world the way that we think it ought to be shaped, to force other people to believe what we believe or to live the way that we want to live. That might give us a momentary respite, right? This sense that the world is as it ought to be, but it's just for a moment. It's a veneer. It doesn't last. The message of Good Friday, for me, the thing that strikes me about this story is that Jesus, fully realizing everything that was going to happen to him, he stepped forward to face the threat. He was willing to suffer for who he was and what he'd come to do. I think the challenge to me and to all of us is if we're willing to do the same. I mean, Jesus told his followers, if you're going to follow me, that you have to deny yourselves. You have to pick up your cross daily. That what happened to me could happen to you. That if you're going to pledge your allegiance to me and you're going to follow me in this world, that you might face trouble, you might face problem, you might face hostility. We know the truth. Jesus is truth. The question I'm asking myself and the question I'm going to ask you is, do you love the truth? Do you love the truth? Or do you love your life more?